Question, I think, in the back.
Cini from the Swedish Embassy. I'd like to ask you about the idea of the small government that is often advanced by conservatives and by yourself. Having had now a Republican majority, both a Republican president, and a Republican majority in both houses for quite a while until lately. How can you explain that this hasn't happened? Who do you want to blame? And is the sort of increase of earmarking that we saw during the last Congress to blame from this? Because the earmarking is actually federal money going into different projects from the cradle to the grave, as you say.
Right. On the, there are really two questions there that are both important, I think. On the whole idea of whether the Congress or the executive branch of the government should decide how all of the money is spent, I think you can make a great federalist argument about that. And if you looked at many of those individual items that members asked for, that could be called earmarks or member-directed projects or whatever, they generally drove an agenda of finding a solution different than the federal government solution. And in the long term, I think that has great merit. I think in the greater debate of ideas, that got so confused with spending in the bills that may have had some earmarks in the last Congress but don't have any in this Congress or may not have very many. The money still gets spent. So don't delude. Nobody should be confused that whether or not this adds money. It just decides who's going to spend the money. The money's still going to get spent. It's just going to be spent by someone in the Bush administration rather than some specific direction from Congress. So I think it has little impact on total spending. I think we should have done a better job with total spending. And in fact, the 10 previous years I've been in the Congress and the budget I voted on this year, all would have spent a lot less money than we wound up spending. I think my second option was then to find out where there were 217 people that could agree with me to get to 218, the magic number in the 435-member House, that tried to minimize that growth as much as possible. And in the last 4 Congresses, particularly strong in the last 3 Congresses, the growth in the discretionary part of the budget that didn't deal with defense or homeland security was below the rate of inflation. So we were holding the line, particularly when you see these same bills come through in this Congress with increases of 9.5%, of 15%, of 30%. The increases in those bills in the last Congress were 0 or 1%, as they were in the Congress before that, 0, 1, or 2%. And so while we didn't do everything we'd like to have done, and I hope can do better given the chance to do better, we did hold the line on spending. In a comparative way, $115 billion of new spending in the first year of a new majority is a pretty huge difference in what we were doing and what they would be doing by themselves. But I think we were penalized by our supporters for not doing a better job. I will say again, we cut entitlement spending, where a lot of the real growth and overall federal spending is, by $40 billion, and you would have thought that Republicans in Congress, conservatives in Congress, were the most heartless people in America because they weren't going to allow these programs to grow as fast as they were projected to grow. So it's a hard fight, and we've got to figure out how to fight it. And we've got to remember when we do fight it, the group on the side that is directly involved in the program, often as people who work in the program, are very engaged. The taxpayers are out there trying to figure out how to pay the taxes. They're very disengaged. And so how do we make that happen? One of the great examples of how we made that happen was welfare reform, which happened a year before I got to the Congress, where conservatives for several years created the sense of need, of importance of changing this program, and then tried to change it in a major way, and did change it in a major way, rather than just kind of nipping around the edges of a dozen different programs. There's a great lesson to be learned from how welfare reform was accomplished and the incredible difficulty of cutting $40 billion out of the growth of all the entitlement programs in the government. One was accomplished with great success. One was accomplished, but with significant pain and no real philosophical change in how these programs operate. And I think we have to get back more to that. Anything else? Thank you all for letting me be here today. Yes, thank you.